welcome to my channel. Um, so today I'm gonna talk about Duskmorn Brew. This has a lot of cards that are new. This is a deck that plays in Standard. So if you guys are aware, I usually indicate which format my decks belong to. But yeah, so this is a new deck that popped off with a bunch of cards from Duskmorn. What makes this deck work is Entity Tracker and Enduring Innocence. So these two cards basically enable you to draw a bunch of cards. You should be running four of each. I didn't have the wild cards to do so, so I'm running to Bottomless Pool. Card is not bad in the deck. I mean, it's been doing work for me, but yeah, you'd rather have two more, at least one more of each of these guys. It was just a bunch of rare wild cards that I didn't have, and so I did craft all of these uh, and all of the rest, but the rest is uncommons basically. So the deck is kind of cheap in the sense that it takes very few rare wild cards to put the deck together, because most of it is uncommons. Uh, so now that we know that basically this deck is meant to be a drawing engine of Entity Tracker and Enduring Innocence, um, I'll show you what the deck actually does to win the game. So other creatures you have are 4 Optimistic Scavenger. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield or you unlock a room, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And then you have Gremlin Tamer, which is basically whenever it has Eerie, whenever an enchantment you control enters, or whenever you fully unlock a room, you get a 1/1 Gremlin. So this basically allows you to go wide and interacts very well with Enduring Innocence, because basically what this does is whenever you play an enchantment, you also trigger Enduring Innocence. Because Enduring Innocence is whenever you play, whenever a creature you enters the battlefield under your control and has power 2 or less, you draw a card. So no, notice that this only works once each turn, but you have a lot of enchantments with flush. So you can make Gremlin Tamer create 1/1s on your turn and your opponent's turn, and you draw a bunch of cards. That's the way this deck goes off. Then we have Inquisitive Glimmer. It's a 4 off again. It reduces the cost of your enchantments. It reduces the cost of your unlocks. It is an enchantment itself, so it triggers all the Eerie's in the deck. Entity Tracker is 2/3 flash for 3 with Eerie, draw a card. So these are the creatures basically. There are some more creatures I want to test, but once again, my resources are limited. But I think I wanted to try Enduring Curiosity in this deck also for extra draws. Because the deck tends to go really wide with the Gremlins from Gremlin Tamer. And Enduring Curiosity is basically like Enduring Innocence, but it has Flash. And whenever a creature you control deals damage to the opponent, you draw a card. And the other card I wanted to test in here, it's the Blue Overlord, which is an enchantment, and whenever he enters or attacks, you draw two and discard a card. Because from my experience, this deck has a small problem with flooding. So there are games in which you're just gonna draw a bunch of lands and you have nothing going on. But the games in which you can keep going are just insane. Then let me get into what enchantments you run in this deck. So I'm running two bottomless pools just to replace cards that I'm missing, but the card ain't bad if you wanna run it for budget option like I did. It it works really well. Cause the first step it's a bounce and the last step it's basically enduring curiosity but on a room. You can also use this to trigger twice your Eerie's, so it's not that bad. And mostly I cast this just for one to bounce something and trigger Eerie. Then we have for Ethereal Armor, which is basically the win game situation of the deck. Ethereal Armor on this deck just gives a lot of power to your creatures and the first strike, which is also relevant in combat situations. We are running 4 Shard Mage Rescue and 4 Fae Flight. Both these enchantments have flash, and when they enter, they give Hexproof to your creature. So this serves to protect your creatures that you want to win the game with. Then we are running 2 Ossification as removal, that also triggers Eerie, and we are running 4 Sheltered by Ghosts. This card is giving me, after playing with it, it's giving me a bit of mixed feelings. So I think the ward is pretty relevant when your opponent is kinda screwed, but there are some matches in which it's so irrelevant to have ward, and the lifelink is also relevant in racing situations, but I think ward is mostly against like uh, Gruul prowess that runs on low uh, land count. Because when you're playing against decks like Domain and other mid-range stuff, you're removing something and then they kill your thing and they get it back, and sometimes getting it back is more damaging to you than if you didn't take it away in the first uh, place. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about this card, but I think that sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's just okay. It's a card that I tend to sideboard some of in those more mid-rangey matches, but well, it is what it is. Uh, then for the lands, we are running 4 Seacrom Coast. I'm running 4 the Darker Wastes, 5 plains and 5 islands. This is very relevant, by the way. You should run a lot of basic lands because of ossification. So don't think you can just come here and cut basic lands and it will go alright. You might just be stuck with the ossification in your hand and not be able to cast it. Um, and then the player that did the 5-0 was running 4 Flood Farm Verge, which I recommend. But I didn't have it, so I'm running 2 Restless Anchorage and 1 Meticulous Archive. All these lands are good. It's just that um, Flood Farm Verge actually um, works really well in this deck because you have a bunch of basics. However, I still think that the Restless Anchorage have been serving me well, because sometimes, as I said, I get a little bit flooded, and this is a way to sink your mana into activating the land. It has won me games before, so uh, be aware of that. Uh, you might want 1 or 2 of these in your deck, just in case you flood. You have something to do with your mana. Now let me just show the sideboard. In here I have 3 Destroy Evils. Some reason they are separate. But yeah, I have 3. I think this card was good before and now it's even better because Eerie is a thing. You have a bunch of new enchantments that are really really powerful, and this also goes after creatures that are toughness 4 or greater, which is usually what you want to deal with when you're playing this deck. It destroys talents, it destroys Leyline Binding, it's an incredible card right now. It goes after all the overlords. Then we have 2 Ossification, which is just extra removal. 4 Elspeth's Might for aggro matchups. When the opponent has small creatures, you want to deal with them the most efficient way possible, and that's Elspeth's Might most of the times. Ossification is also good, but it's a bit slower. Then I have uh, 3 Negates, which is basically against Domain and control decks in general. And then the the original deck list had three kidnaps, but really didn't find I really didn't find a matchup yet where I wanted to use kidnap. I think the card is a bit on the more expensive side, and I replaced two of them already for strokes to play against the main. And I'm not sure. I probably replace the last kidnap for something else. Maybe enduring curiosity, because I want one more threat when I'm dealing with more mid-range decks. And I think enduring curiosity is better than playing some of these enchantments that basically you are trying to protect your creatures, but they have Sunfall. So in those matchups, you'll feel like Faith Light and Shard Mage's Rescue aren't doing their job. They're pretty good against green-black decks because almost all their removal are targeted. But against white removal decks that have Sunfall, you'll feel like giving X-Proof to your creatures is not where you wanna be. So Fireflight and Shard Mage's Rescue have that caveat. And in those matchups I prefer to have negates and strokes just to stop my opponent. But then you are cutting enchantments and not triggering Eerie. So that's where I wanna bring in Enduring Curiosity, because he's also an enchantment creature. It gives you draw in other ways that don't require you to trigger Eerie. So there's that. The blue Overlord also fits very well in this deck. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure. He's a bit on the expensive side. But as I said, sometimes I flood and I have nothing to do with my mana, so having one or two wouldn't shock me, especially on the sideboard. So that could also be an alternative for this last kidnap. Uh, and that's about it for the deck tech. So let's go ahead and play some games with this brew for you on YouTube. The video of the gameplay will release later. Hope you enjoyed this one and see you on the next one.